Hello, I'm John Hughes. I'm happy to be here today for this important conference and to recognize Problem Gambling Awareness Month. I attended the Ohio Problem Gambling Conference last year in Columbus, and I'm happy to be here again with you today. I was appointed to the Ohio Lottery Commission in 2019 by Governor DeWine as the Addiction Services Liaison on the commission. Although the mission of the Ohio Lottery is to maximize profits for education in the state, it is our priority to provide entertaining games in a safe manner while connecting individuals with a gambling problem to resources for help. The Ohio Lottery has a robust, responsible gambling program with Ohio Lottery Commission Chairman Matt Blair and Director Pat McDonald enforcing this commitment. I also want to thank my fellow commissioners for their help and support. Ohio Lottery Director of Responsible Gambling, Karen Russo, works closely with the state agency partners in the Ohio for Responsible Gambling collaboration on the comprehensive statewide efforts you have heard about throughout this conference. This collaboration and the work that you are all doing to prevent and treat problem gambling is critical for the citizens of Ohio. Personally, I have 16 and a half years in addiction recovery. I have been involved with dozens of interventions and have helped individuals suffering from addiction, as well as their families, in several Central Ohio recovery facilities and prisons. I also want to mention that recovery is an inside job. We can help another person, but we can't do the work for them. And so I'm here today to share my story of addiction and recovery with you. I was exposed to gambling and betting on football games at a very young age, probably about 7 years old. In the 1960s and on Sunday afternoons, our family room usually had 2 TVs and a radio. Both of the TVs had football games on them, and the radio was usually tuned in to Detroit, Michigan, where we could get a Detroit Lions football program. I thought everybody really had that. Although I was never encouraged to gamble, it was our way of life and it made me feel a part of things. I used to run to the phone when the bookie called. In fact, I knew him so well, he sent me birthday gifts. I would rush to the phone, excited to be a part of what was going on in the house. For a long time, I really didn't understand what was happening, but it didn't matter. It was exhilarating. I also experienced gambling in junior high, betting with an older kid who seemed to always win. And from the time I was a kid and well into my adulthood, I gambled on football. When I was 12 years old, I actually used to go down the street on Euclid Avenue in downtown Cleveland and pick up or deliver money for the bets. I had no idea what I was picking up, but again, I felt a part of things. It was just about this time that I had a serious fall down the steps at our home and severely injured my neck and my back. This injury still affects me to this day. I began having serious problems with the pain in my late 20s and 30s, and it became so unbearable that doctors began to prescribe strong medication like Percocet. Soon after the Percocet was prescribed, the doctors became concerned that I would do damage to my liver or other inner organs and decided they would change that drug and began to prescribe to me OxyContin. When I started to take the OxyContin, the addiction to pain medication went to a whole new level. At the same time I was taking the pain medication, I discovered that alcohol would intensify this effect, as it says on the prescription bottles. So at this point, I'm drinking a lot of alcohol, I'm taking a lot of pain medication, I'm gambling as my hobby, and I'm smoking a lot of cigarettes. These things together began to destroy me. And as they played off each other, encouraged and triggered each other, I found that I was falling into deep despair. So if you fast forward to 4 or 5 years and 2 neck fusions later, I'm still doing all of this. And at this point, I'm in really bad shape, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. I'm feeling completely hopeless. And it comes down to the fact that I realize if I don't go to treatment and get some kind of help, that I'm probably going to die. This was my moment of clarity, the moment when I knew I had to do something. So I decided to go to a 30-day treatment program in California. I do that, and somewhere in there, during the 30 days, a light bulb kind of goes off in my head. And I realize that I just don't need to stop taking pain medication, but I need to stop drinking alcohol. I need to stop gambling, and I need to stop smoking cigarettes because they were all feeding off each other and causing me serious health issues, loss of weight, all kinds of things that were going wrong. At the time I was in treatment, I was actually calling my 14-year-old son, asking him to place bets for me while I was in treatment. I can tell you that didn't go over well at home. Neither did the fact that he started taking bets at high school. This is a perfect example of how the disease spreads from one generation to the next. It was at this time I began to realize that my addiction problem impacted my entire family, caused problems in the entire family, and I realized that it was clearly a family disease. We were all suffering from this. But I soon discovered that if the disease could spread, so could recovery. And I can tell you that to this day, as I sit here now, my wife and both of my children all work in the addiction community. My son's a nursing director for a facility. My daughter's an administrator for a facility, and my wife's the assistant to the CEO for an addiction facility. I had very little confidence when I left the treatment facility that I could resolve all the problems that I had. But I did everything they told me when I left treatment. And had they told me to stand on my head in a corner and that would have helped me, I would have done that too. I came back and started to try to put my life back together. I talked to people who had the same issues. I worked a program and started to work to change my life. But nothing seemed to help me more than after a year in recovery when I began to volunteer 3 to 4 days a week at psychiatric, drug, alcohol, rehab facilities, along with state correctional facilities and county jails. I did this from 2004 until the pandemic struck and I was no longer allowed to volunteer at that time. So the pandemic strikes and I'm having all of a sudden serious pain in my stomach. And I discover that my gallbladder needs to be removed. Now, this could be a real threat to my sobriety as they were prescribing me Percocet for the pain while I was waiting for surgery. But when I first got into recovery, I learned and was taught by other people that you can set up roadblocks to help yourself. And so the roadblocks I had set up was I was taking medication as it was prescribed. I was taking it for what it was prescribed for. I had someone holding the medication for me. And once we were finished, it was removed from the house. I think it's also important to mention, along with the addiction issues, I also suffer from mental illness, as most people do who have addiction problems. And it's every bit as important that I treat my mental health as much as I treat my addiction. To me, it is all the same thing. So I take medication for good mental health. I abstain from alcohol, gambling, and pain medication. Funny thing is I learned when I treat my mental health, I just don't have the obsession to gamble. And the unfortunate thing that came through all that over the years was it took me a long time to really enjoy watching football games again after I had stopped gambling on them. There's never been a more important time in our country to promote mental health and addiction awareness than now. Isolation, depression, anxiety, and fear are so dangerous, especially after what we have experienced and are still experiencing. Please keep a close eye on your family and friends. They may be suffering and don't know how to reach out for help. If it weren't for my family who encouraged me for years to go to treatment, and I never did until later, I never would have made it. There's no question that addiction and mental health ran deep in my family for generations. And right now, as far as I can tell, I am the only one that made it out so far. I'll never be cured, but I'm a lot better than I was. I want to thank you for listening to me. I'm so grateful to be a part of the lottery and doing whatever I can to help combat addiction. This is why I serve on the commission.